Hey everyone, welcome to the Not a Lonely Coffee Break podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Meaghan. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer.
I always like when we sit down to do an episode. Of course, this episode is a little bit different because there's a lot going on right now.
Let me tell you all.
Yeah, it's
been an
wild.
emotional week.
It really has. It really has. But speaking of queer, before we get into the content of the episode, I wanted to first tell you that the day after the election, to practice self-care, kind of, we went to the Pink concert in Arlington.
I didn't even know that was happening.
I know. She was supposed to be here over the summer, and then silly Pink, she came to Texas and forgot to take her allergy meds. So she was sick. So this was like the rescheduled date.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good. We had really good seats, but I'm not going to lie to you. Her songs hit a little bit different. Because of just the weight of everything. But I was so glad we got to go and just kind of have a few moments where maybe we weren't thinking about it. And yeah, we had a good time, even though it was a really late night.
And for those of you listening, we're talking about the election. It was not good for us. Yeah, I'm not going to blame you on that one because I actually called into work. And I woke up that morning and I was just saying, I spoke to my spouse and I was like, you know what? I just want to be with you today. Like, I don't want to, at the time, my job was fine. They had coverage. It was fine. Everybody, I didn't abandon them. But I did say, hey, they're okay. I'm going to take a moment to be okay too.
Right.
And just kind of check out. And yeah, no, I'm glad you went to that concert because I think we all needed something to just kind of get out and not be stuck in the house. Because I went out. We spent way too much money at Wally World and ended up going to an arcade, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, it was, I'm glad you got to go out.
I think we're in a time right now where we all need to be making sure that we are taking care of ourselves because we know that there's a lot of heaviness right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear that a lot of people are having. I don't know if you've seen this, but since the election, the Trevor Project has seen an uptick in crisis calls.
Wow.
Of people calling the crisis line.
Yeah.
And so people are hurting, people are scared. And we all are. Because we both were kind of struggling with what to even kind of talk about. I did reach out to someone.
Who's our hero for today?
I know, yeah. I reached out to a friend of mine who was one of my college professors when I was an undergraduate. He is such an ally to the community, and he does tremendous work in making sure he holds space for marginalized voices, vulnerable populations, and really just listens. And so I asked him to join us just to have a conversation and see if we can maybe get some tips, some strategies to help us navigate some of these feelings that we're having. So our guest today is Dr. Jon Singletary. He is a social worker and currently teaches at Baylor University in the social work department. Hey, Jon, welcome.
Thank you, Maddie. I'm honored to be here.
We're so excited to have you, and I'm so glad you jumped in at the last minute for some great, important conversations. And I'm actually really excited because I don't even know, Jon, you may not remember this, but you were a vital part of my coming out journey because I was a college student and I knew who I was, but I was kind of in that that school, that campus where it was like, is it okay to say this? And I kind
Sure.
of like nonchalantly wrote it in an assignment. And my professor pulled me into her office and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble. And you were invited in, help kind of facilitate the conversation about next steps. But it wasn't like you're in trouble. It was, how can we support you in this? And we want to make sure that you feel supported despite being in this situation that, it may not be as comfortable coming out.
Wow. I do not remember that. I mean, I clearly
Yeah.
remember you. I remember your fireball energy, and loved you as a student, but I don't remember that particular story. But
That's amazing.
I hope that was an encouraging
It
experience for you. That
was. Yeah.
baby steps coming out are a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was such a positive experience and you had always been an ally before then, and that just kind of further highlighted like true allyship. It wasn't like, "Oh my gosh, you can't say things like this in your assignment." It was, "Thank you so much for sharing this. How can we support
Mm-hmm.
you?" And so that
Wow.
was just
Good.
it was
Thanks
really
for telling.
special.
You're like, phew, I did
I know,
it.
right? Thanks for reminding me and making it sound decent.
Right?
John is like, "Oh good, I didn't say something terrible."
Yes, right. Exactly. Woo.
So, John,
So,
tell us a little bit about what you do.
yeah.
Yeah, well, as Maddie said, I'm a professor at Baylor and the dean of our School of Social Work. I love what we get to do at Baylor. I love the care we get to offer students. I've taught social work for 20 years, and my focus has been primarily kind of more macro social work, more of a community organizer, community
Mm.
developer by background, and teach more of those classes, along with some research classes as well.
I knew that your background was more macro oriented and community oriented, which was why I wanted to bring you on for this conversation because there's a lot going on right now. Um,
Yeah,
and, Megan and I all week have even just been texting each other. And I've been texting with my friends,
sure.
acquaintances, and there are a lot of mixed emotions right now.
Mm,
And how do we start to kind of process those feelings about
yeah.
how we got here?
A colleague mentioned in a meeting that on the day after the election, she said, today some people are happy and some people are not happy. And I thought in my gut, that's not really the story. It's not that some people are not happy. Some people are not feeling safe. Some people are feeling raw and vulnerable and hurt and anger. There are a lot of feelings. I'm not sure not happy is at the top of the list for most people. So I really did try to dial in this week, even though I'm not a uh, clinician. I still know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am in social work after all, so I do know enough
Mm-hmm.
about how mental health matters to think we need to pay more
Yeah.
attention to what people are carrying, how people feel, what it means in their bodies. Right now is a time to pay attention to that because it's not just a matter of not being happy because my person didn't win.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of brings some thoughts to that. It's like, how deeply does our community care for one another? And it's
Mm-hmm.
really bringing in that question, like, who can I trust? Who is, a safe place to be around? And then, which we're going to bring up is like, as a professional, I mean, we have to make money, right? We have to go to our workplaces. We have to go and maybe interact with people who are probably, voicing out their, we won thing. And on the
Right,
inside, we're just like, the best move for me is not to say anything because
right.
I'm just going to single myself out. And so now it's like, do I even feel safe in my workplace? But I have to make money, So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
really, for our listeners, what can we do now to move forward, to heal, but then to also, like, what does this mean in the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I, I don't know that we can even begin to have a conversation about healing yet. I think we
Mm-hmm.
just have to learn to see the wounds and be honest about the wounds and feel the pain, learn to sit in the pain before we can get to that place of healing. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't know how. I don't know how we're going to get there. How do you pay attention to the pain and take care of yourself and keep
Right.
yourself safe? I mean, those are big
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Yeah. I think, you know, uh I think you're right, John, though. It's not necessarily a feeling of unhappy. It's the most I can sort of connect to it in my own personal experience is grief.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I've experienced grief in the past, that's what this kind of feels like. And it's going through those stages of grief, right? Right now, I'm in like the anger stage.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so it's like, hopefully one day I can get to the next stage, but it's hard because I also am a macro social worker.
Mm.
And so I'm seeing so many people in the community hurting, and I'm already
Yeah.
like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Of course. Of course.
But it's
Right.
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know what to do because I don't know what's going to help me right now.
Right.
Um
Yeah. So, I'm trying, I mean, as a white cisgender straight male, I'm trying to figure out, what is mine to do when so many of my people who look like me and live like me have contributed to this pain. I feel the weight of that. I often use this quote that I learned years ago from a theologian who says, um, I am responsible for the house I did not build but occupy. And that's kind of how I feel is someone seeking to be a co-conspirator, an ally in this is, I did I, there are things I've probably done to make things worse along the way for some people. But even if I don't feel that, how can I be the kind of partner I want to be, the kind of ally I want to be, the kind of co-conspirator I want to be? How
mhm.
do I learn to walk alongside, practice solidarity in a counterintuitive way? So I want to really lean into these experiences that you're sharing, both of you, Maddie and Meaghan, and our queer students are sharing, and my friends at church who are out, and
Mhm.
in our community with our Pride network. Sending, just like what you're saying, sending text to people, checking in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also like you, Maddie. I'm ready to jump in and take that next step.
Right,
But
right.
I've read enough. I've read enough on Instagram to hear people say, first, just breathe,
Yeah.
practice self care,
Mhm.
just sit a little while. And you are, the stages of grief are a great analogy. And stages is a funny word for them because I mean, we all know this, they're circular, they're not straight
They
lines. It's,
they're
they're
kind of
not even
all
necessarily
morphed
stages, they're just,
together.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a blob of grief.
It's a
Yeah,
And so
swirl.
you'll
exactly.
swirl, that's right.
Yeah.
And you can experience several of them in the
Mhm.
same half hour.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
just have
Yeah,
to let all of that happen.
I definitely experienced that Wednesday. I
Mm.
ended up calling into work because I woke up that
Mm.
morning and I was like, my mind is not going to be able to function today. I literally can't
Mhm.
function. And honestly, I just wanted to stay with my spouse and just, kind of not think about anything. I was trying to avoid the reality. But at the same time, I was angry and I'm like, well, immediately I'm like, who do I need to volunteer with? Because I need this fixed now. I need this. And it sucks so bad because it's not like that. And that, and then I'm in this denial and then I'm in sad. And it's just like, yeah, that big swirl, this big thing that I just don't know what to do with anymore. It reminds me last episode or the couple episodes, I don't remember, it's all blurred, but I had talked about going to the Human Rights Museum and they
Mm.
talk about how those in the Jewish population, a lot of the things that I saw as their government was changing is very similar, which is incredibly scary, right?
Sure.
In the reflection to that. And their communities had different batches of people, either people that just had to stick with their families and just do what they needed to do, people who fled,
Right.
people
Right.
who stayed and fought, and people just had to survive, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And it's mind-boggling that we're, in a different sense, kind of dealing in the same sense. Like, right, there's some of us that are like, I need to flee, some of
Yeah.
us that are like willing to stay and fight and willing to or just like, I just need to protect my own little batch of people. It comes down to, we were voting for human rights, and a lot of people don't really see that in this way. They just see like, oh, well, they're just a group of people that want to do what they don't agree with, but it's not like that.
Right.
We're totally being singled out, afraid to just live our day-to-day lives and just be ourselves. I come from a conservative Mexican American family that I've grown up and became a hard ally in the LGBTQ community, and I'm seeing both sides. But it's some are just trying to protect their little unity, and some are like, no, like how could you do that? How could
Right.
you just abandon an entire community
Mm.
like that?
How can we continue to build positive community while being
Right.
in an uncertain community?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
any tips or thoughts? Because I don't.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll share some thoughts. I don't know if they're the best tips, but I think I hope they have value. Um, I've already said it, but again, I'll say take care of yourself and keep
Mhm,
yourself safe as a first priority. So now's not the time to take the risk to, if you have to express some of the anger and rage at work, not using it as a time to also come out and, unless you can afford to step away from the job, don't
Mhm.
put yourself at
mhm,
risk if you're not doing it for the reasons that you want to do it. I'm not telling you not to do that, but
mhm.
do it if it feels safe and right, and not
For you.
because you feel
Mhm,
cornered or you're having to
Mhm.
share something you aren't ready to share yet or say yet. Keep
Right.
yeah.
keep yourself private. Now's not the time to be any more public than you have to be. And I'm not saying go in a hole, but just be smart and be safe. I want everyone to be
Mhm,
safe. Then decide when and where and how you're going to have those conversations. So,
mhm,
again, be measured, be intentional, be thoughtful about when and where do I express what I'm feeling. Uh, and only when you feel like you have enough trust in someone, where it's enough trustworthy space uh, for you to kind of process some of these things with someone else. And start with people you already have some trust with, people that,
mhm,
where are places where you have experienced community that you can build off of.
mhm,
And if you don't have that, where do you look? Where do you look for local pride organizations? Where do you
Mhm.
look for chapters of the Human Rights Campaign? Uh, where do you look for religious organizations that are affirming and are queer centered? Um, so find those places. Be safe where you can. Find places that are safe to process some of these things, to express together how and when and where to take next steps. And then once you have that safety, then I feel like we can make some plans about what do
mhm,
we do next to work for
Right.
change.
Yeah.
I think that will come.
Mhm.
And if you feel that safety tomorrow and are ready to do that tomorrow, great. But don't feel
mhm,
like you've got to be the one to fix it all in the next month.
Right.
One of the things I think is really
yeah.
true that I've heard people say is that this election just revealed what was already true about America. And so, what are the ways that our country has already been expressing its fear of our queer community, its racist roots,
Mhm,
sexism at its core? I don't think we are electing someone new who may make things worse, but we're also highlighting the fact that this is what America has. In a sense, it's a pendulum swing, but in the other sense, it's just what was already there. It's just more obvious and blatant in this
Mhm.
yeah.
person
Mhm,
in this day. Um,
mhm,
but if this is how our country has been, then let's trust that. Let's say, okay, if people aren't as safe as I thought, what do I do? And that sounds awfully cynical, but I think it's just, now's the time to allow that cynicism, to be
Mhm.
smart about the risks we're taking.
um we are a little bit more reflective even in the kinds of relationships, or intentional even. It's kind of me
Yes.
trying to make a silver lining in this. You're more intentional in the relationships that you are building with people, and so they are maybe even stronger because you are building that relationship on shared values, shared morals, shared
Yes.
beliefs
Right.
about things.
Right.
And so you feel more secure in that community that you're rebuilding, maybe even because I know I've seen a lot of people already saying, I have cut people out of my life um, because of
Yeah.
the result of this election. And that may not be the case for everyone, but I know that I've seen a lot of
Right.
individuals that have made that choice already.
Yeah. I think we have to allow people to make the choice that is
Mhm.
best for them, that feels safest for them, that feels most supportive to them. And so, um, and I use social media that way anyway. I know it's an echo chamber, and that's okay. I'm not looking for alternative voices. I'm not looking for the full spectrum of uh, voices in my on my Instagram page or in my Facebook account. I'm looking for community there. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not all my old high school friends who are different from me. It's
Mm-hmm.
current friends that I know I can trust
Right.
and have relationships with and can lean on and can be honest with. And so, I think it's okay to let this be a time of kind of thinning down who we
Mm-hmm.
know we can trust and rely on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say that that was probably one of the most aggressive things I felt. That was just like, the next morning I was sitting there and I was like, social media has magnified my community circle, which everyone around me has similar beliefs and similar, like, to see this as a country, as a, on a bigger level, and to see a complete difference of what I believe, what my values are, as like, this is my new governing system. I was like, okay, now maybe I should, take that into account, that I like, that's why it was such a big surprise for me, because I was just, all the bad has been filtered for so long, and everything, I'm just scrolling and scrolling, and I just see the things that I want
Right.
to see,
Right.
and then all of a sudden I'm like, now I'm seeing something I don't want to see, and I'm like, where did this come from?
Delete.
you know, delete.
Delete.
Yeah, unfollow.
Yeah, I think we need to see the full range of
Mm-hmm.
our country. I think we need to see how the other half is responding. But I don't want that in my Facebook feed. I don't want
Right.
that in my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram feed. So I'll
For real.
occasionally listen to a different news source to hear different support or look at a different newspaper site.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want that to be my Facebook
Yeah. Yeah.
community.
Right. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So that's actually a good sort of segue. We've talked a little bit about our feelings, our emotions, which we
Mm.
could continue to talk about. But I am curious, and I know, we're still really uncertain about everything. We don't know a lot of things. But what are some things that I guess that maybe we do know in your research or your understanding of maybe some policies that you've seen in terms of how this is going to impact potentially workplaces or educational type of policies that we can perhaps start to move forward in making a plan for.
Well, this sounds, again, it sounds kind of cynical and dark, maybe, but I'd rather be honest
Mm-hmm.
in this time and space and just say, I think, typically I'm going to assume the best in people kind of a person. I'm an optimist, but I
Yeah.
think right now it's
Yeah.
okay to assume the worst. I
Right.
think
Mm-hmm.
assume the least amount of rights possible. Assume
Mm-hmm.
that, we know that there are certain rights and laws and things that are meant to protect us, but sometimes people can ignore them and get away with whatever they want. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, at our kids' school, we know that there's a separation of church and state, and they're not supposed to use religious things. But there's prayer before football games, and there's Christmas
Mm-hmm.
music that's Christian, and the schools aren't supposed to do that, but they get away with it. So right
Mm-hmm.
now is a time where, maybe schools aren't supposed to discriminate, but some people are. And, maybe they're not supposed to allow certain hate speech, but we have to just assume they're probably are going to let some things slide, let some people get away with things. We've already seen some uh, hate-filled things kind of ramping up. And I wish we could say that's not going to happen, but I think I'm going to assume the worst right now. I'm going to assume that uh, people will be able to be more discriminatory
Mm-hmm.
rather than less. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we have court cases and more clear laws, but employment protections are pretty thin.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I know it's devastating to hear that, but I think it's better to just be honest and say that's
Mm-hmm.
why I want people to be safe and smart
Mm-hmm.
and know where you can really be safe and
Mm-hmm.
trusted and trust others
Absolutely.
in every sphere of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then my hope is that then that will inspire us to work harder to make these spaces safe, to create better laws, to
Mm-hmm.
change, to get people on board, to build allies, and
Mm-hmm.
to really co-conspire to make sure that we have the protections that we absolutely need and deserve for our queer family. But let's not assume that there's more protections than there are right now. I think we need to just
Mm-hmm.
assume that people are at risk.
Mm-hmm.
People are saying that they're not safe, and so let's trust them when they say that and say, okay, if my friends aren't safe, if
Mm-hmm.
people are saying, oh, everything's fine, you don't have anything to worry about, I'd rather say, hey, it's okay to worry right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to tell you to worry more, but be smart, be safe, and then let's figure out what do we need to do differently to make sure
Mm-hmm.
we have protections in place, because right now I don't trust many of the protections.
Right.
Oh no.
No,
Oh yeah.
they're yeah, they definitely leave a lot of wiggle room. And in
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying too, it's what I think what we also need is some validation, right? Some
Yeah,
validation that the fears are real,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that lives and families are going to be,
yeah.
torn apart,
Mm-hmm.
quite literally.
And
I
if not, we'll be
think
surprised.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm pleasantly surprised,
Right.
but it's in the direct if we trust with what has been said and promised right during the campaign that
Yes.
is going to be done, then you know I think those who are taking it lightly should take it seriously as it starts to happen, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a joke, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be a one-off. This one person is going to have this happen to
Mm-hmm.
them. It's going to be thousands of people if they are to overturn anything.
Yeah. Well, and I also, and Megan, you're touching on this. I also just want to acknowledge, like, yes, we're focusing on queer individuals, but there are so many
Yeah.
other individuals that are feeling
Right.
these same things. And John,
Mhm.
you said it earlier, anyone who's not a cisgender, heterosexual individual is at risk.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are feeling a lot of the things that we were talking about. And so I do agree. I think it is time for people to consider what safety looks like for them
Yeah.
and what steps they need to do to feel secure. I know
Right.
for me, and I don't know, John, if you've been hearing this too, and or feeling this too as a social worker, or even hearing it from fellow social workers, but I've been struggling. The social worker in me who runs a group for queer youth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what am I gonna say to them in group? And then
Yeah.
if me and my family decide that security for us looks like leaving,
Yeah.
what does that say to the community that I am supporting? Like, does that say I'm just throwing my hands up and I don't care about them? And so I've kind of
Right.
been struggling with the professional calling that I have, but also the selfishness that I have right now of
Yeah.
taking care of myself and my family.
Mhm.
Yes. And I don't think it's selfish. I think it's just self care. I think sometimes if we don't practice the self-care, then we do selfish things without realizing it.
Right.
Then we kind of, our kind of ego takes over and we do these reactive things that are selfish.
Mm-hmm.
But deciding where you can live in order to be safe is not
Mm-hmm.
selfish. And you can't stay for the sake of other people
Yeah.
if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel that first, nurture that sense of self first in order to be the best caregiver, nurturer, professional for others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can't be responsible for everybody's care. We can't.
Right.
We can do the most we can, and within the realm of the boundaries that we know we have to set,
Mm-hmm.
and learn to be okay with that.
So, so I know part of uh, feeling secure comes sometimes with setting boundaries.
Yeah.
What are some good, even just like maybe quick suggestions? And I know this election aside, you've dealt, when I had you even as a professor, it was policy, and you've sort of
Hmm.
been a little bit more in this macro space and having to
Yeah.
interact with people who have multiple perspectives all the time.
Sure. Sure.
What are some tips of setting some of those boundaries around conversations that you want to have or not have, or even if it is like, okay, I'm not gonna cut this person out of my life because there's still something there, but I need to be firm and letting them know XYZ.
Yeah. My wife and I have been having this same conversation. With the holidays coming up, there are some.
Mm-hmm.
We started saying today, do we need to text people ahead of time and say we just want to be clear, we do not want to talk about this at the holidays? Or do we just assume they're not going to talk about it? And it's different with
Mm-hmm.
different families. So I think in some situations, if you reach out and say that, it can backfire and just make things worse. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
know, if we're talking family, is your family the kind where you need to say what your boundaries are in order to protect them? Or is it that you just set them for yourself because bringing it up will create a firestorm that you didn't intend? So, sometimes we think, oh, I need to say this to be clear, but you don't have to communicate every boundary you set. You just set it and abide by it. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you have to communicate it in order for other people to respect it, you do so.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like we feel like we have to always express ourselves and we have to tell everybody what we're feeling. Like I know
Right.
that there's in the past week I've been just be like, you know what? And people have talked to me about it. I'm like, not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Not today. Maybe later, maybe in a couple days, maybe in a couple weeks, but like not today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kind of even been the theme of our conversation, I feel like, is taking care of ourselves. And I think
Mm-hmm.
setting some of those boundaries, whether it's firm or just kind of something you set for yourself internally,
Mm-hmm.
it's you
Right.
taking care of yourself. And knowing, if this comes up, it's going to prompt feelings I don't want to have, thoughts I don't want to have. And so I'm just not going to, I think it's self-care for sure.
And there might be some situations where you have to do certain things for people that, culturally,
For sure.
you might not be able to say no. Given your job, you might be put in a situation where people are doing things that make you feel a little uncomfortable. And,
Mm-hmm.
there are things we can't avoid, but then make sure you have other spaces where you can
Mm-hmm.
avoid, other spaces where you really can be
Right.
clear that
Have an
this is.
exit
Right.
plan.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Have those exit plans. For this hour,
Yeah.
my mom is going to talk about things I don't want her to talk about. Fine. But
Mm-hmm.
the hour after that, I'm usually doing something fun with my nieces and nephews, and maybe I won't do that this time. Maybe I'll just
Mm-hmm.
go read.
Um, you know, I didn't want this whole conversation to be super heavy, John. So a few more light-hearted questions.
Okay.
What is something that you do to practice self-care? Because I know you're
Mm.
you're real busy and active. So what kind of helps you decompress?
Uh, a, a I'll mention a couple of things, kind of fun. You said it's lighthearted, so fun things first. I do love to either run or go to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do it because I feel, there's all these people that do those kinds of things out of guilt or because people make. But for me, it really is a mental health gift to be able to just running is a way to just kind of feel my body in a different way, to kind of just let
Mm-hmm.
my body get some things out of its system, and same with going to the gym. Going to the gym, I don't talk to anybody there. I can just kind of be quiet. I can be introverted. And even if I'm not working out the whole time, just it's a place where I can go and just kind of, it's me and my headphones, and I don't have people asking me to do things, expecting me to do things. It's just kind of quiet space. And if I do happen to work out, great. But sometimes just getting there is important. And also I'll say, but maybe because I'm a social worker and maybe it's that macro part of me,
Go
but
ahead,
I
say it.
like,
Research.
no, no. Okay. I'll build research in the conversation. I love researching things I can do to try to make a difference.
Yeah.
So, I'm committed to listening to women of color. So I'm looking at books and podcasts from women of color because I want those voices in my head. And I'm looking for kind of alternative businesses to support.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't have, Waco's not big enough to have like a great collection of those, although we have started one. Dallas has the queer chamber of commerce, LGBT chamber of commerce, that has a list
Yeah.
of queer businesses. So
Yeah.
having organizations, I love researching things we can do that are not only safe spaces but doing good work. We all spend money, so I want to spend it at places that have the same values as I do, that are building the communities I want to build. And then I know sometimes just in going there and going to places like that, I'll find some solidarity. I'll find some community.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Jon, for joining us,
Oh,
and
It was
gladly.
great insight.
being willing to dive into this potentially chaotic conversation with us. I really appreciate it. I knew you would do a great job at it. Um,
Well, I'm glad you think
Our
so.
savior.
so I was honored that you said yes, absolutely. I look forward to
Mhm.
just continuing the conversation with so many people.
This is how we
Yeah.
build community right here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
definitely nice to get some
Hmm.
insight and to hear your leadership, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
Because as I was briefly scrolling a couple days, I was like, there was a lot of silence. Obviously people saying, "Hey, I'm taking a break from social media, whatnot." And then there's some
Right.
people that are like, "Take a moment, but don't give up yet."
Yeah.
Like
Right.
just being supportive. And so it is nice to hear that leadership in your voice, and knowing that, like, there is a chance to still build community regardless.
Absolutely.
And so that's where I'm going to hold on to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all. This has been fun.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, I don't know about you, Maddie, but one, that was really nice to get some stuff out because I just needed to hear something other than the voice inside my head. And
Yeah.
two, I'm going to go
No.
throw up the anxiety.
No. I think it was, holding space for the reality of the
Mhm.
fact that we don't know what's going to come, but also gave me a little bit of hope that, there's still people out there that do care. Um,
Yeah.
and um, once we take time for ourselves a little bit, we can hopefully start to rebuild that feeling of safety and security. So I know that was really encouraging for me in
Hmm.
this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And just like, sticking together with the people that you love and trust,
Yeah.
I think that's a big one,
Hmm.
right? Is just making sure you have your support circle, making sure that you know what that looks like. And I think my biggest takeaway, honestly, was that exit strategy. Like, you know what?
Hmm.
If you feel obligated to, be with families or family members or people that you're not really sure if they're going to create a space for you or a positive conversation, then have that exit strategy. What are you going to do instead? Because I
No,
always
I
get
loved it
myself in the
too.
thick of it.
No, I loved it too. I mean, I think it never hurts to have a plan
Yeah.
for multiple things, like whether it's even just like a self-care plan. You feel like you're struggling to even be like, I don't know how to go about my day. Maybe even just making a plan of things that you're going to do during the day is something that can be helpful for you. Because we're all in different spaces right now. We all have different feelings. We all have different thoughts about all of this. And so we want everyone to be doing what they need to be doing to take care of themselves. And we want you to be safe and feel safe. Let us know in the comments what are some things that you guys are doing right now to build community or maintain community, and just take care of yourself and your loved ones. We definitely want to know. So let us know in the comments, or you can email us if you don't feel comfortable sharing on social media. We understand that. But we are here and we are queer. So we are out of coffee, which means that's our cue to wrap up. But as always, you guys make sure that you are connecting with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads, as well as Patreon. And then, of course, check out the show Spotify, YouTube, and Apple.
And
Yeah,
thanks for joining.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, that is it. So,
That's a wrap.
Meaghan, another great episode.
Cheers,
Cheers,
queers.
queer.